The Claas IH Axial-Flow 7150 is a bit of a conundrum. It's wanting to be a large harvester while still having the main carrying capacity of a small one. It has these massive wheels on the front of it, meaning that it's not going to be ideal for the smaller, tighter roads of places like Court Farms and Bally Springs. However, the carrying capacity of 10,570 litres is also very underwhelming for the harvester's size. The auger pipe is a reasonable size as well, which is nice, and it is quite a short harvester, which is probably where a lot of the carrying capacity issues come from. It does have a whopping 449 brake horsepower, however, which means that both the corn and the grain headers are going to be really easy to use on this, and you're going to be able to really start expanding on the size of them. This is a harvester that I feel is a little bit overpriced at £304,000 for what you're actually getting. Capacity is king on these sorts of things, especially if you're playing solo. The really small amount of carrying capacity you get with this really lets this harvester down. It's also quite slow at only 30 kilometers per hour, which is a bit of a shame, especially if you have a larger map to traverse. However, it does have a whopping 950 litre fuel capacity, so you're not really going to be running out anytime soon. The Claas IH Axial-Flow 9250 is the bigger brother of the 7150, and what a big brother it is. It comes with a 14,400 litre capacity and a 634 brake horsepower engine. You also get many more customization options with the wheel setup, which makes up for the lack of an engine upgrade. You can have crawler track, wide tires, standard, and the twin tires as well. This means that you can make the harvester a bit more user-friendly on smaller fields and roads like Calmsden and Court Farms. However, it is still a large machine, so you're still going to have a little bit of an issue. The auger on this one is massive, and again, the case itself is quite a short harvester, which really makes it quite impressive at how much capacity there is on this one compared to other models. It is also a lot cheaper than the other large harvesters at only £415,000. This makes it a much better buy than its smaller counterpart, the 7150. I actually really like this harvester. I think that this is a great deal if you are just starting out and don't really want a massive thing like the big Claas Lexions. It's a good sort of in-between ground for your money, and it's going to see you well pretty much throughout the entire journey of your farm. The new Holland Ch7.70 is one of the best harvesters around for early to mid game. It has a very respectable 9,300 litre carrying capacity. It comes with a whopping 374 brake horsepower and a top speed of 30 kilometers per hour, which makes it a fairly decent mid-sized harvester. It has the ability to go up to, I think it's 24 foot or 8 to 12 meters width-wise on the header, which makes it perfect again for those medium-sized fields. It has a decent auger pipe here as well, allowing you to cart with larger trailers, and it's not that big, meaning it's great for smaller farms as well. It's one of my favorite pieces of kit. For £267,000, it is honestly a steal. It is a staple on most of my smaller farms, and it will generally speaking be one of the first harvesters I go to buy unless I'm on one of the larger farms like Oberthal. It is a perfect balance between carrying capacity, power and speed that allows you to really be quite versatile on whatever field you're taking it with. It also handles hills like a breeze and has a really nice interior and obviously the bright exterior that New Holland is known for. This really is a fantastic little harvester. The New Holland CR10.90 Revelation is, in my opinion, not as big of a bargain as the CH7.70. The reason why I think this is because for a harvester of this size and capacity, the actual carrying capacity you get is nowhere near as good and doesn't match up to the other harvesters of its class. It only has a 14,500 litre carrying capacity at nearly 700 brake horsepower. Granted, the price is very reflective of this at only £443,000 at base. The auger is a decent size. The styling is exactly the same as its smaller model. It looks incredible. I just feel that the carrying capacity really lets it down. For me, who plays solo, the more I can carry, the better, and I'm more willing to pay more money for that. The other thing that's a bit of a letdown with this is that the customization options you get outside of the wheels are purely cosmetic. You've got Design 1, Design 2, and Design 3. None of these change anything about its actual functionality. They are purely cosmetic, and honestly, Design 1 kind of looks the best anyway. You do get a choice of tracks or wheels. Honestly, I prefer the tracks. I find them a bit more useful, and they look a bit more harvester-like, and they're also going to help you on the smaller, thinner roads of the tinier map. Also, crawler tracks add another £20,000 to the price. Again, really reducing the amount of value that you are getting from this harvester compared to others with just a larger capacity and larger versatility overall. A good harvester, just not a great one. The Claas Lexion 8900 really outshines its opposition. It is the biggest harvester in the game, carrying capacity wise and power wise, and it really does go to show. I used this harvester on Oberthal, and honestly I couldn't imagine me using anything else at all on that farm, purely and simply because of how big the fields are. This is such a lifesaver and a fantastic harvester to have that it tackles anything and everything you throw at it. It doesn't matter what your incline is, doesn't matter how big the field is, it handles it, and it handles it with ease. At base, you get 780 brake horsepower. This cannot be changed. Variable CVT gearbox, 40 kilometers per hour top speed, and 15,000 liters capacity, which if you put the big on, which only adds 6,800 pounds more, takes it all the way up to 18,000 liters capacity, and all for less than 500,000 pounds. This is honestly one of the best harvesters in the game, and I will not hear otherwise. It is such good value for money. It is so powerful. It has got such a large carrying capacity that you really don't need anything else. If you're on a large map with massive fields, this really is the go-to because it will just save you so much time. The Massey Ferguson Ideal Paralevel is the baby in the Ideal series. It is still a whopping great harvester though, especially when you consider the fact that at base it starts with a whopping 451 brake horsepower. This puts it in line with the Case, IH, and the Claas. However, if you upgrade it all the way to 647 brake horse, it puts it well and above. Such a huge power rating, and yet weirdly not a lot of capacity. It only has 12,500 liters capacity, which means that even though you have this massive amount of brake horse, the Claas is probably a better deal at over £100,000 cheaper and the same amount carrying capacity. The auger pipes on the Massey Ferguson and the fence are huge, and they are rather impressive. I do believe that the Ideal series is very, very good. However, the baby series just seems to be very, very expensive for not a lot of gain. You do get 1,250 liters of fuel capacity though, allowing you to really spend a lot of time on the larger fields without having to refuel very often, which can save you a lot of time. The Massey Ferguson and the Fendt Ideal series are fantastic. They come with a lot of different customization options, allowing you to tailor the harvester to your heart's desire. At base, it comes with 451 brake horsepower, the variable CVT gearbox, a top speed of 40 kilometers per hour, and a carrying capacity of 12,500 liters. The price is pretty fair at this as well, at £419,500. However, if you upgrade the engine all the way to the 9T for an extra £100,000 on top, that gives you a whopping 647 brake horsepower and a 17,100 litre capacity. What's cool about this sort of harvester, however, is if you want a lesser powered engine, you can then still have that 17,000 litre capacity by adding an extension. This level of customization is really, really nice as it allows you to tailor to your budget. I have noticed that the Fendt and the Massey Ferguson do tend to struggle a little bit on hills and uneven ground, which is a bit of a shame considering just how powerful they are, but they're still really, really, really good harvesters for the price. The Rostelmash Nova 330 is a fantastic little harvester. I remember starting my first ever save on Stuart Belleron and choosing this harvester with the starting farm. It's surprisingly good at transforming power, and you can get away with using a fairly large header for its size. It only has 175 brake horsepower and it only goes 20 kilometers per hour. For a small farm or for a new farmer, it is literally perfect. It only costs £75,000 and it only has a literage capacity of 4,900, but honestly it doesn't matter. It is the perfect thing for a beginner farmer to really get to grips with how a harvester works. It does make it somewhat difficult to cart along with, as the pipe here isn't that long, but if you get a small tractor with a small trailer alongside it, you can cart relatively well. Perfect for fields that are probably no more than 5 or 6 hectares large, and as long as you're not really going uphill or anything, it's great. The one downside to this is the corn headers. You can't really use anything outside of the small one that it comes with because it can't handle it. Anything bigger than like the 3-meter width, and it will refuse to go at all. However, the normal grain headers are perfectly fine, and you can go up to, I think, around a 6 or an 8-meter header without too much trouble, depending on the brand that you actually go with. It only has 510 liters of capacity as well for fuel, so you really are going to have to watch what you're doing if you do decide to use this harvester. Bang for buck, £75,000. It's a cracking little deal. The John Deere T560 is where we are starting to get into the larger of the harvesters in the game. It has a little bit more carrying capacity than the New Holland, but is also £20,000 more expensive. Styling wise, it's a bit boxy for my liking. I much prefer the rounder, smoother lines. The auger pipe is a decent size and it seems to be fairly maneuverable, and it's also a lot faster than the New Holland at 40 kilometers per hour. Has a carrying capacity of 10,000 liters exactly, so you get a little bit more there as well, and it does have more HP. So for that £20,000, you are getting quite a lot more harvester for your money. It does seem to be perfect for medium to starting to get into the large size farms and fields, with that extra carrying capacity to really allow you to start making headway. As is typical with John Deere, you do tend to pay a lot more for the headers as well. With the extra power you get, you are able to start expanding and getting the much larger 12, maybe 13 meter wide headers. It's a cracking little harvester for the money. It's a good entry point into the mid to large sized harvesters. The Topliner 4090 is one of the most disappointing harvesters I think I've had the displeasure of using. It's great on flat surfaces and is a reasonable upgrade, you would think, from the Nova. However, at £129,000, it is a bit of a letdown. Any sort of an incline or slope and you're going to be coming to a crawling standstill. It doesn't really deal with the larger headers anywhere near as well as the Nova does. However, you are able to use a couple of the larger corn headers opposed to where the Nova you really can't. You do double the capacity as well, almost, with 8,500 liters from the Nova, but compared to the New Holland Ch7, it just doesn't compare. The amount of money you spend on this is just, it's not worth it in my opinion. I would avoid this like the plague and just go to something bigger or stick with the Nova. The Claas Trion 750-720 is where we start to enter into the larger harvesters with more customization and power options. This is the baby of the harvesters at only 10,500 litre capacity. Also only goes 30 kilometers per hour, and it does start at a 367 brake horsepower engine. However, because we are starting to venture into the larger harvesters, you can actually upgrade the engine all the way up to 435 brake horsepower, meaning that it's going to be a lot more capable of dealing with hills, slopes, and larger headers as well. Also, when you increase the engine size, you gain an extra 1,500 litres capacity, taking you to 12,000 litres capacity. This is really worth the money, as it does cost you £43,500 extra to upgrade that engine. I really like the Claas harvesters. I like the fact that they keep them quite thin as well, with the track wheels on the front as opposed to the big wide tyres of the case. The interior is quite nice, and Claas just tend to make really good big machinery. The auger pipe is massive, allowing you to really cart in a nice safe way, not really venturing into other players if you're on multiplayer, and allowing you to venture around the AI safely as well. This is a cracking harvester, but it does come with a hefty price of £401,000 with the bigger engine and capacity. The John Deere X9 1100 is what happens if you pump a load of steroids into the T560. This is bigger, better, and just more mahusif in every single way than its other counterpart. It comes with 690 brake horsepower, it comes with the ProDrive XL gearbox, it has a 40km max speed and a whopping 16,200 litres capacity. It comes with front crawler track, and you can actually change the design of the auger pipe on this as well. You get the longer, extended version if you change to design 2. You can change the wheel setup from EU and US, which basically makes them a little bit wide apart, giving you a longer chassis. Honestly, I generally tend to stick with the EU version on this, but it's a really, really good harvester. However, it is getting quite expensive. £550,000 exactly for this harvester at base. It's a great harvester, however, I'm not sure I would be willing to pay that amount of price for not a lot of versatility.